Are the Mets working on contract extensions for Michael Conforto and Jacob Degrom? What's up, you guys? I am Tony Metro. Welcome to the second edition of the Talkin Mets with Tony podcast. Today, we're going to be covering the potential extension of those two guys, and then we're going to go around the league, recap the first week of baseball. Before I go any further, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and leave this video a like so you guys can see more Major League Baseball content. You guys can also follow me on social media at Tony Metro MLB. Alright, so let's take a look at today's docket. Just like I mentioned at the top, we're going to be talking about the potential contract extensions of those two guys, Michael Conforto and Jacob Degrom, and then we're going to go around the league, discuss some of the most recent events from this week's action in Major League Baseball. So, the big news of the week, of course, was the New York Mets-Washington Nationals opening series being canceled after the Nationals had a few members of their team test positive for COVID. That doesn't mean that there wasn't some interesting news for the Mets this weekend, though. On Wednesday evening, the Mets struck a deal with Francisco Lindor on a 10-year extension for $341 million. And rumor has it the Mets are looking to do the same with both Jacob Degrom and Michael Conforto. So on Saturday, we got a report, and even though he's not our favorite reporter, SMY's Andy Martino said that the Mets and Jacob Degrom have had preliminary contract extension talks. Now, Martino did say in his report that talks were initiated, though they did not progress and are not expected to resume this season. He even said, repeat, this is a dead issue for now. So, Jacob Degrom received a 5-year extension for $137 million just before the 2019 season. About the only good thing that Brodie Van Wagenen left the Mets in his tenure as GM. So, he's still under contract through 2023 and has a team option for 2024. But Jacob Degrom does have an opt-out after the 2022 season. And this has led many Mets fans to wonder if the Mets should potentially extend Jacob Degrom yet again. So, doesn't sound like a deal is imminent or will be even reached during this season. But considering he's still under contract for 2 more years, at the age of 32, it might make sense for the Mets to consider giving another extension to Jacob Degrom. Now, again, he is 32 years old. I do expect him to continue to pitch well into his late 30s. He didn't debut until 27, so a little bit of a late bloomer by most standards. Doesn't have as much wear and tear on his arm. My question is, what would an extension for Jacob Degrom look like at this point in his career? Well, after he signed his extension in 2019, Garrett Cole signed his mega deal with the Yankees for $300 million. But Cole signed that contract at the age of 29, so I don't see the Mets having to go that far in terms of money or in terms of years on the contract. So Degrom is still eligible to earn $120 million if he plays out the rest of his career. He'll get $33.5 million the next 2 years, $30.5 million in 2023, and if the Mets opt in on his contract, $32.5 million for 2024. Obviously, it's a little bit away, and like Andy Martino said, it doesn't sound like a deal is going to happen soon, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Meanwhile, could the Mets be ready to hand out an extension to right fielder Michael Conforto? So, we've heard some rumors here in the last few days that the Mets may be on the verge of doing just that. On Saturday, Tim Healy tweeted this, saying that Sandy Alderson and Steve Cohen were supposed to speak to the media on Friday, kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. Finally, they're going to speak to the media tomorrow. But meanwhile, during that time, they've kept Michael Conforto unavailable to speak to reporters. Now, Healy did reply to a fan saying that he was in no way insinuating that the Mets are trying to extend Conforto at this time. But he also didn't deny it, which for me as a Mets fan is good enough. So, the Mets' biggest priority this offseason after acquiring Francisco Lindor was to extend him. And they did just that. The next biggest priority after that was to extend Conforto. So this is huge news. Conforto is one of the longest tenured Mets and now probably is the captain of this team. He's the representative for them when it comes to the player union and just always has seemed to have been the quiet leader in that clubhouse. So extending him to a long-term deal would be a great way of retaining this young core. But just like Jacob Degrom, what would an extension look like for Michael Conforto? So, George Springer just signed his 7-year, $150 million deal with the Blue Jays at the age of 31. Springer has a better resume than Conforto does. He's also a center fielder. That being said, Michael Conforto also has Scott Boras as an agent, who we know is not in the business of giving out hometown discounts. Personally, I see Michael Conforto testing free agency next year. Unless the Mets are willing to blow him away with a contract extension offer, I definitely think he's going to want to go and see what other teams will offer him. Think about it this way. Conforto's 27 now. Next year, he'll be 28. If he has a bad season, he'll be 28 years old entering free agency with a very solid track record. If he goes into next season after a very solid 2021, he'll have put together 3 consecutive very good seasons and be just entering his prime. As of today, if I was the Mets, I'd be willing to offer Conforto the same deal that George Springer just signed for 7 years and $150 million. Now, Scott Boras is probably looking to get $200 million, so if the Mets and Boras can find a middle ground, 7 years, $175, I would definitely do that immediately if I was the Mets. What do you guys think? Is that too much of an overpay? Would you give over $150 million to Michael Conforto? And lastly, going around the league, let's take a look at the action from the first week of baseball. Trevor Bauer made his first start for the Dodgers. He threw 6 no-hit innings against the Rockies before giving up 4 runs. His season ERA sits at 5.40, but he struck out 10, a very impressive debut. Meanwhile, there were fireworks in Cincinnati. The Cardinals and the Reds had a benches-clearing brawl. Nick Castellanos slid into home plate on a wild pitch, stood over Cardinals pitcher Jake Woodford and had some words. The benches cleared, and it turned into a complete shoving match between the two teams. Castellanos was ejected, but there were no suspensions. Personally, love to see a good old-fashioned baseball brawl, especially so early in the season between the two division rivals. Lastly, Matt Harvey, yes, that's right, Matt Harvey made his Orioles debut on Saturday and pitched pretty well, actually. He pitched 4 2/3 innings, giving up 6 hits, 2 runs, and struck out 4. Harvey is looking to make his latest comeback attempt after most recently pitching with the Royals and the Angels the last 2 years. And that's it, you guys. That was the latest edition of the Talkin' Mets with Tony podcast. I appreciate you guys checking in. Be ready for the next episode coming up on Wednesday after the Mets and Phillies. I'll be recapping the first week of action for the New York Mets and giving you my predictions for their upcoming schedule. Once again, I have been your host, Tony Metra.